Welcome to the Intellectual Freedom Podcast. Here we analyze politics, culture, technology, personal growth and development, and society at large through the lens of critical thinking and open-mindedness, not demagoguery and partisan hyperbole. I'm Dr. David Hopkins, humanities professor, your host and guide. So without further delay, let's get started. So glad you are joining us from wherever you may be. You know, I'm only 2 weeks away from the 1-year anniversary of starting this podcast, and I still get blown away when I see the stats on the podcast that people in 31 different countries have listened to it, and 45 out of the 50 states. By the way, hey, Maine, Idaho, North Dakota, Wyoming, and Kansas, where in the world are you? If you happen to know anyone in these states, go ahead and ask them, what's up for not listening in? No, I'm just kidding. But this podcast from the very beginning has been about discussing important topics to grow physically, intellectually, just gaining a deeper perspective than the superficial. And I'm still sort of amazed people listen, as when I started, I wasn't sure if any of it at all would resonate, but thank you. So the topic today, crab mentality. It's pervasive in society. And as I usually want to do here in this podcast, I want to define what this problem is. Number 2, understand why it is even important. And then most importantly, give you some things to walk away with that you can implement in your own life. So many of you may be wondering, what in the world is crab mentality? So crab mentality is really nothing more than this phenomenon where people react negatively in either it's their thoughts, statements, or actions to those who get ahead of them, even though they don't expect there to be any direct benefit to doing so. The name actually comes from observing crabs in a bucket, because all of them fail to escape from this bucket if you put them in there, because they keep pulling back any of the crabs who manage to get to the top. At one time or another, all of us have interacted with people who try to demotivate you, extinguish your enthusiasm, scare you, or actually just drag you down. By the way, I'm not talking about constructive feedback and genuine care from another person, or a person who is giving you feedback on something that can help you make good decisions. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about with the crab mentality is fear-mongering, lack of curiosity, manipulation, acting out their own unpleasant, unprocessed feelings and insecurities on you, trying to meet their own narcissistic needs by attempting to control you or another person through either their words or their actions or both. This is incredibly important. As a college professor, I've seen this far too many times. And parents, I want to talk to you for just a second here. Your kids are not you. They don't think like you. They surely don't need to perform a career you want them to perform. And you not supporting their goals will not help them become their best selves, even when your intentions are good. Every semester, and I do mean every single semester, I have a student going into a field of study because mom and dad said I should do it because I will make money and there are many jobs. I mean, sure, some fields have more jobs than others, and some fields, they make more money than other fields. But manipulating or pushing a child towards a career you want as a parent versus what they are interested is guaranteed, and yes, I say guaranteed, recipe to fail. I've been seeing these students for 20 plus years, and I will guarantee you it never works out. A child living out the dreams of a parent that maybe went unfulfilled in their own lives. Okay, let me stop off the soapbox for just a second and let's get into this crab mentality. It plays itself out in many different areas of life. So crab mentality, it can be played out in your finances. Many who know me know I'm a massive minimalist. I believe the only true path to true financial freedom is to owe nobody any money. If you have no debt, something incredible starts to happen. The money you make, you get to keep it. But there are people, as I've coached financial freedom, that they run into big roadblocks. It's the second they start paying off debt and living in a frugal lifestyle. People in their family or friends who aren't making similar progress, they'll ridicule their small victories and mock how they don't do anything fun. They don't have the latest and greatest fashions, and they're driving around crappy cars. There's a version of it in finances. When it comes to physical health, when someone manages to start exercising and improving the food they're eating after neglecting to do so for a long time, sometimes acquaintances and even family members who aren't able to do the same thing might try to sabotage their progress. Offering drinks and desserts at a family gathering by tempting them with the, "Oh, come on, you only live once, it's not that big of a deal" type nonsense. Crab mentality shows up in social situations. When someone starts engaging in a new hobby, for example, that helps them socialize maybe with new people. Older friends might even mock that hobby and discourage them from engaging in it to keep things quote unquote the same. When it comes to career or life purpose, people who want to start a new business or make a career change often don't get support, but rather get negativity and doom and gloom and end of the world and why would you give up your safe job that you have? That type of rhetoric to keep that person complacent and stuck in the same place. This crab mentality is incredibly dangerous for three main reasons. And if you have suffered from others pulling you back and you feel it and you know it's not right, here's some of the reasons. Number one, crab mentality can cause you to shrink from your goals you have in your life to satisfy some other person or another group. You know, at the end of the day, when you're taking your last breath, no matter what anybody's opinion was on that, those satisfying things that you did for your group or your family, none of it's going to matter. And eventually, if you give into that crab mentality too much, it's going to lead to regret and being resentful of the person holding you back. If it's a friend or family, this is really important. If it's just, say, a random online social group or society in general, well, I hate to say it, but you may just need to give the middle finger to that crowd. Another danger, number two, crab mentality can cause you to waste time doing things that don't benefit your life. The wasted time may not just be physical either, but the negative emotional energy of being pulled down by those closest to you can exact a very large psychological toll on you as well. And then finally, the crab mentality, it can amplify very negative emotions such as anger, frustration, resentment. In being stuck, we've all been stuck and we know how that feels like, and it's not a good place to be. This is real. There are many very angry, very bitter people in the world today. And of course, not all of them are just being pulled down or prevented or stopped from doing something. And that's what's causing this problem. But one thing is for certain, that very negative emotions, when you hold someone back long enough, they spring to the forefront. So why in the world do people get this crab mentality? Those people that are constantly trying to drag other people down. Because by understanding these underlying causes, we can get greater insights into dealing with them. First of all, maybe the most simple, I hate to say simple, but obvious, I think most associate crab mentality with a person driven by negative emotional motivation. What does that mean? When a person wants to feel better about themselves, they may pull someone back. This can happen as a tool people use for coping with envy or as a way to make themselves feel better about their own status when they can diminish the accomplishments or the goals of other people around them, or even stopping them flat out from trying to achieve something better. The second reason, it could actually involve a cognitive bias. And I've talked about many cognitive biases, but this especially a hyper-competitive person is very susceptible to this because it can create this hyper-competitive person. It can create a very misplaced conception that there can only be one winner and there can only be one loser in a given field or a company or a life or a high school class. It's called the zero-sum bias, and it causes people to mistakenly view certain situations as being either or, a zero-sum game, meaning that they incorrectly believe that someone else's gains, your gains, will come at the expense of their loss. And it could happen in all areas, careers, jobs, money. Sadly, many people have that kind of a perception of life, and it's completely wrong. Another bias that can lead people to have a crab mentality is this bandwagon effect. Especially in our social media driven world that we live here today, this bias causes people to think or act in a certain way because they have this belief, a very misplaced belief, that everybody else is doing the same thing. This bias can, for instance, lead to the spread of crab mentality, and the second anyone steps out of the groupthink, like crabs in that bucket, they're going to try and pull the free thinker or the person who thinks differently right back into the bucket to be the same as everybody else. So it's good in advance to be able to read people and understand if they are susceptible to the crab mentality. You may have people you know already in your life that they have this crab mentality of trying to pull you down rather than build you up. But here are some clues of someone who fits the category of demonstrating the crab mentality. It's important to be aware of them so that they can't pull you down. So people that tend to have this crab mentality, they speak negatively about other people. They may be gossip, offhanded gossip. Maybe it's just they always see the negative stuff in everything. Another one, they tend to react negatively to the accomplishments of others, often in a very automatic manner, or view the accomplishments of others as reflecting negatively on themselves, or diminish the accomplishments of other people when they're going through it. Those are really dangerous things. They tend to have a cumulative effect on us when we're around it a lot, and we tend to get sucked into that very easily. Also, when you see that person who seems to get way too much satisfaction with other people's misfortune, it's actually a pretty ugly character trait that when you see someone, when someone fails, they almost get a smile on their face and they can laugh and joke about it very easily. The person, we have to be careful because probably they're going to show characteristics of that crab mentality. Another one, they just lack compassion towards other people. There is something really sad about individuals who just can't even show basic human empathy towards the suffering and the things others go through. These types of people, sadly, are often very susceptible to that crab mentality. The tendency to complain and criticize constantly, often without any attempts at solving problems. You know the person, I know the person. Everybody's got to complain about absolutely everything, and it's always bad. And oh, woe is me. Oh, woe is the country. Oh, woe is society. It's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. But yet, the solutions, if there are any solutions offered at all, tend to be very vague, very general. unspecific to the point of impossible to implement, you know that person, the complainer, the criticizer, without offering solutions, they tend to be highly susceptible to the crab mentality. Insecurity and bitterness towards one's own abilities, accomplishments, or status. There are some people that have been beat down a whole lot, and it can bring forth these negative emotions. And as the old saying goes, hurt people hurt people. And, those that have went through a whole lot of really bad things, or they're highly insecure, one of the best ways to enhance their own lack of feeling self-worth is to try and drag others right down to where they are versus elevating themselves. It can happen, and it does happen, and you have to be careful of those people. So those characteristics, you can see them in others, but right here, listen real carefully. I want to challenge you for a moment. Do you demonstrate those characteristics? Are you part of the problem? If you do, maybe some self-reflection is needed. I know I've been guilty of many of those, but if you do demonstrate these characteristics towards other people, whether it's friends, families, acquaintance, whoever it might be, I think maybe you need to think about that very carefully. What is your self-talk like, first of all? And secondly, do you actually say things and do things that propagate that crab mentality yourself? So the first step, don't be a part of the problem. It's great that you can identify the crab mentality in others, but it's almost more important, really, if you think about it. Do you demonstrate in your actions, in your thoughts, a positive, collaborative, supportive, understanding, empathetic mindset? Do you do that with your kids? Do you do that in the job? Do you do that with your spouse or your significant other? Do you do that with your friends? Think about that. Are you positive, collaborative, supportive, understanding, and empathetic? Or are you showing that crab mentality and trying to keep them pulled down right to wherever you may be right now? I think all of us can get better at this. It does no good to sit around whining and complaining about all the haters that exist in the world today. And there is a whole lot of them. But instead, in our own lives, we actually also, let's not be hypocrites and act like the haters while we decry those that are holding us back. In the end, we only control what we control. Other people, we don't control them. But our own thoughts and our own actions, yes, we do control them, and we need to put our focus here. We get better always by working on ourselves first before we start preaching to the masses or our friends and families about how they should treat us and how they should get rid of their crab mentality. But let's assume, you have that friend, you have that family, the loved one, or even a social group, and they're demonstrating that crab mentality towards you. What are you left to do? First, let's assume out of the gate, you can't sway this person, this group, to move them towards whatever it is you want to achieve, whatever goal you're setting forth for yourself, new adventure, whatever it might be. And they're just dead set against X, Y, or Z that you believe in doing or achieving. Well, number one, the first thing you can do is just ignore them. Hey, this is an option. Especially if the crab mentality is coming from people you are not close to. I mean, really, there is a segment of the population that no matter what you do or how you do it, they simply are going to be hating on what you're doing. You will never be able to satisfy a certain segment of the population. So just ignoring them is an option in some circumstances. Now, we need to recognize, if we're going to be critical thinkers with humility and open-mindedness, we do need to honestly, ethically evaluate perceptions and opinions of other people that we value, as we don't live alone on a deserted island. So ignoring everybody is not an option. And so ignoring should only be used when you're certain or fairly certain, because nothing in life is perfectly certain, The problem is people demonstrating a crab mentality against you. So you get the idea on that. Number 2, you need to realize that their crab mentality towards you is probably driven mostly by their own issues rather than by anything that you did, even if their behavior is directed at you. It's hard enough to get your own life right, let alone fix the lives of others. So a certain degree of understanding and acceptance of the person that is trying to hold you back is required. Even as you move beyond their criticisms, sometimes you simply can't solve their problems. Number 3, whenever possible, forgive other people for engaging in crab mentality. Not necessarily because they deserve it, but because that's the best thing you can do for yourself. It's often said that holding anger and resentment inside of you is like drinking poison and expecting the person who wronged you to get sick. It doesn't work that way. It's cliche, but the freedom in forgiveness is powerful. Look, that doesn't mean you need to forget like it never happened. The forgiveness is more for you than it is for the other person. Number 4, which brings us to what I think is maybe the greatest solution to this crab mentality. Focus on your own progress and your own accomplishments rather than on other people's negativity. Because if you're constantly looking for affirmation or you're scared to death of the negativity, you're never going to reach your best self. You have to throw your energy and effort towards the positive, towards the journey, towards the struggle that you are on right now, and forget about all that negative talk that's coming from other people around you. Number 5, refuse to engage in crab mentality yourself. I already talked about this, but the way that we can reduce this happening in society is if each person in their own lives stops doing it, and over time you get kind of that organic growth towards moving in the right direction. But refuse to engage in crab mentality yourself. And even do the opposite, actually, if you really want to push yourself to a higher level, by actively celebrating the achievements of other people. I already talked about this, but wow, what a great repudiation after being the victim of crab mentality to turn it around and do the opposite for your kids, for your family, for your friends, and for others. Now that is a real act of heroism and positivity that will pay you back in spades over time. Finally, in some cases, the best long-term solution is to simply distance yourself from people who display crab mentality. What can you say? Life isn't perfectly symmetrical. And the fact is, some people and some groups will always stay the same. A little distance mentally or even physically may be in order. I often tell my freshman college students when they come in the first semester that sometimes to be successful in college, they may have to distance themselves from things that may hold them back. It could be people in their old neighborhood that are stuck in a cycle of negative, destructive actions and mindset. They may need to be left behind, and they may need to build a new network, a more positive, a more collaborative, a more encouraging, a more motivational network to reach their optimal self. We know this to be true for recovering alcoholics or drug addicts, or even the recidivism rate of people released from prison. If they get out of recovery or they get out of prison and they go right back to the same group of friends where the problems happened in the first place and they haven't modified any of their behavior, that person, once they return back to that group, they may tend to repeat the same problems. So sometimes distance is needed to break out of that. In the end, this crab mentality is dangerous because it prevents people from being their best true self. They are allowing crabs in a bucket, whether they're friends, family, social groups, to pull them back down to right exactly where they are. And just like crabs in a bucket, you as a person, if you're not careful, can become susceptible to doing the exact same thing that happened to you to other people. So if you're being held back by others, challenge yourself to stay focused on your goals, your journey, your aspirations. And if you're also, or sometimes, one of those people holding others back, challenge yourself to stop doing that and become the agent of change, that agent of encouragement, that agent of support that you would like to have in your life as well. Thank you for listening to the podcast today. I so hope you found value in the topic today. You know, every single day, if we can expand our perspective just a little bit on any range of topic, whether it be about our physical body, intellectual sharpness and perspective, or spiritual growth, then if we stay consistent in the long run, we all become more well-rounded people able to cope with all manner of events in life. I always appreciate you clicking like or follow to this podcast. Generally, a new episode is published every single week. And please, if you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear about them. With that, I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week until we talk again.